you see a lot of noise on the internet about AI this and agents that, but you don't get to do any of that stuff if your data is a mess. From a Sparkgeo perspective, we've developed a technology that we call prescient, and it's initially prescient.earth was kind of an R&D lab that we put together. Now we've realized that the most important thing that we can do is build data environments for our customers that act as the foundation layer for more future-looking geospatial activities.
Hello and welcome to Horizons, the World Geospatial Industry podcast. Our guest today is Will Cadell, founder and CEO of Sparkgeo. Will, welcome to WGIC podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's wonderful to be on.
Great. Will, you believe that geospatial is changing everything. Honestly, it resonates with WGIC's tagline, geospatial in everything and geospatial for everyone. Can you tell us the story behind the founding of Sparkgeo and your belief in geospatial is changing everything?
Yeah, so I'm a Scotsman, and I'm lost in northern British Columbia. I came over here with my wife for a big adventure and haven't gone home. But in doing so, sort of pursued a career from a government scientist stroke spatial modeler in the UK to the private sector, to the resource sector in Canada. And I spent 5 years in the resource sector in the early 2000s in Canada. And we were doing some pretty awesome, like large analysis of vegetation resource inventories. And we were doing some rudimentary use of Earth observation technology, Landsat at that point, to refine those vegetation inventories and to do some what we called terrestrial ecosystem mapping. And then, but it also felt that we were very much like, from an operational perspective, we were putting maps on paper to send out to the field, and that didn't really make any sense. And it also felt that mapping was a kind of a regulatory need, as opposed to an operational efficiency. And when something's a regulatory need, it's usually like a race to the bottom. And what I mean by that is that you want to do it as fast and as cheap as you possibly can, as opposed to investing in that technology and making it as effective as possible. So around 2010, it occurred to me, because I came out of a software background. I originally did engineering and then a master's in remote sensing. It occurred to me that we really should be using the web for mapping, because it's a better tool for that job. You get to more eyes more quickly. You can open the opportunities to more consumers that way. And in reality, laptops were getting hardened. You could do stuff. You could take computing to the field. You could do all that kind of stuff. So it just made a lot of sense. And at the same time, we had things like Google Maps that were just launching. It's back in the day when Google Maps was a new thing. Just launching. They had their API, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, I felt that enterprises would start wanting to use Google Maps and the OpenStack and such to create robust mapping products that would sit on the internet. So I was looking around and I saw an opportunity to work with a non-profit startup in San Francisco, and to do that, I had to start a business. So I started Sparkgeo, and it's interesting. Like, on reflection, I can't think of anything less likely to succeed than a non-profit startup in San Francisco. But it did open the doors for a number of amazing opportunities, and open my mind to what the tech sector does, and how the tech sector works, and to like really the rest of Sparkgeo is kind of history. We've been building technology that puts maps on the internet to serve broader communities, and that's why we think geospatial is changing everything, because we feel that geospatial is in a brand new place. There's lots more capability, but it also sits as this deep horizontal in almost every single business. Like where landscapes change and where humans move, there's value. There always has been. That's how commerce happens. That's how people build cities. That's where we sort of extract resources. That's the nub of human activity, is around location and how humans interact with their surrounding geographies. So the fact that only some businesses have a GIS department, I think is weird. Like almost every business should be using geography. So whether we use it within the context of GIS or whether we use it in terms of supply chain or insurance or logistics or whatever it is, like geography is absolutely intrinsic to almost everything that we do as humans. So we should be sort of building it in, and that's why we think that geospatial as an expression of digital geography should really be in every business. And as a result, if it hasn't been, then it's changing every single business. So that's where we come to on the geospatial is changing everything, and kind of the history of Sparkgeo. Since 2010, we've been sort of building up our capabilities slowly. We're a services-based business, so we don't do this kind of explosion of hiring. We grow and we grow and we grow and we grow and we grow. And another interesting feature of our organization is that we're remote. So I'm in my home office. Everyone is in their own home offices. We don't have any real estate, and we sort of dial into this notion of remoteness because we feel that people should live for their livelihoods and not just for their live for their lifestyle. Sorry, not just for their livelihoods. So with that in mind, if you like the theater, you can live in one place. If you like the mountains, you can live in another. If you like the coast, you should live over there. I'm a big fan of skiing, so I live in the middle of British Columbia. But where you live shouldn't really be a barrier to what you do, especially in the knowledge sector. So, so people get to put their own geographies to work, if you like, and we feel that's really important.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that backstory of Sparkgeo, Will. With that set aside, can you give our viewers an overview of how Sparkgeo is supporting tech companies, both large and small, to leverage the power of geospatial data and innovation into their workflows and be able to drive positive change? Like,
I'll give you an example. One of the first things that we did was work with Nextdoor.com. And it's a good example because that's a very talented engineering team. But we were able to provide some, overtly geospatial support around. At that point, it was around PostGIS and building their custom geospatial data storage environment with custom APIs and all that kind of stuff. So basically, they had a very high traffic consumer web environment. They needed some geospatial expertise. We were able to provide that and then hand on the technology to them and sort of move on to the next engagement. But it's interesting because it's also a good description of where we add value. We have a team that we sort of invest in. They're ready gelled. They're familiar with the technology problems that most enterprises are facing, and then most enterprises are going to face, and within the context of very high performance geospatial and Earth observation technology. So we can come in with a ready gel team and solve problems that enterprises are overtly going to face before they even know that they're going to face those problems. And then we can resolve them and we can create this kind of smooth transition environment and hand on our whatever we built to either the enterprise to manage, or we can support that enterprise with kind of a managed service environment where we're still around. And if they need any changes or updates or features, then we can provide those and just make sure that the whole environment is still working well for those organizations. So the key thing there is we sort of invest deeply in our sort of intellectual capital, if you like, our people, and we give them a great environment. We give them tons of flexibility, and then we can sort of deploy that expertise in various different environments where maybe geospatial is only necessary for a short time rather than a long time. And so we can build platforms, we can build process, we can provide consulting and advice, and then we back up that advice with code and data. So that's kind of how we operate in terms of the big tech environment. It's to some extent a staff augmentation, but it's a bit deeper than that because we provide these kind of ready gel teams. It's not just about resumes. It's about deep expertise and experience.
True.
And like from a startup perspective, because we worked with Nextdoor.com just as they were becoming a unicorn, but we still work with kind of very early stage organizations too. So we're working with a wildfire monitoring application. They use Earth observation and their own sort of academic algorithm, and we've helped them deploy that within a high performance cloud environment, and they're taking that to market. We're working with property, sort of commercial property discovery platforms, and then on the other end we work with kind of big insurance companies who want to do these, more sort of complex, big enterprise kind of questions. So it's like very much two ends of a marketplace, if you like. It's interesting times.
Yeah. Thanks for that enumeration, Will. I do agree with you and concur with right. Yeah. On that note, you mentioned about early stage startups, and I would like to really understand how Sparkgeo is helping and supporting such organizations go from 0 to 1. What I mean by that is from ideas to scalable products and solutions. How is Sparkgeo supporting such organizations?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the startup environment is complicated. There's a lot. We build technology for startups. Sometimes they're seed, sometimes they're Series A. Depending on where they are in their funding cycles, they need different things. So being able to talk to a CEO, a CTO at a seed stage and convince them they don't necessarily need to scale their application for 100 million users yet, sure. And provide that kind of advice is important. And then talking these individuals through what they might want to look at, how they might want to structure things, what scale can mean, what scale should mean to different organizations, and then how to architect a platform for scalability and identify in advance where certain bottlenecks will be, so you can have a plan for that kind of stuff. And then there's also I see this a lot in geospatial land. There's like it's what I call the geospatial product trap, where you have a technical founder who has an interesting thing that works that's geospatial, but they're not quite sure who to sell that thing to. So they try to engage with a variety of different markets to find a product market fit. But sometimes you can try to engage in too many markets, and which means that you lose the edge and end up falling into this, what I call the geospatial product trap, which is where you say you can do so many things, but end up not doing any of those things because no one quite knows what you're doing, because you can't put your arms around a discrete problem set. So I know you can see this sometimes in landscape monitoring. You can see this sometimes in sort of big geospatial processing. And maybe the excuse is that these guys are building platforms. The problem, therefore, is that you're building platforms for whom, and it's interesting because it's rarely a technical problem. It's more of a sales and marketing problem. So it's weird that us as a geospatial company would end up solving a sales and marketing problem. But that's often where the biggest problems in an organization are. Usually technical founders are very, very clever individuals. They know their technology in and out, but they need help with what I call like the use case discussion. Like, where are you going to use a particular technology? Why are you using a technology? Is that technology better rolled into a broader product suite for a particular market vertical? Or should it be injected into an entirely different place? These are, should it be positioned entirely differently? Sometimes the word geospatial or geographic kind of gets in the way of a deeper sort of kind of value story. So there's lots of interesting bits and bobs in there.
What is your assessment? Some companies are still stuck with legacy technology. What is your assessment about this? And how is Sparkgeo helping such companies migrate their legacy technologies into the modern architecture?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. We see this particularly in the finance sector, where a lot of organizations have grown through like merger and acquisition. So, which like from a business side looked amazing, but from a technology side, the technology integrations are almost never done very well. So, or completed. So you end up with like these. If you're familiar with the game Jenga, you end up with a tower of Jenga blocks that are sort of sitting on top of each other. It's like this teetering tower, and in a large environment, you end up in a situation where no one wants to be the person that pulls out the Jenga block that's going to make the whole tower fall down. So you end up with this M&A environment, which has created these kind of disparate technology environments. So therefore, data becomes a bit of a mess. It's kind of all over the place. There's not a common view of it, and that's a really big problem, because you see a lot of noise on the internet about AI this and agents that, but you don't get to do any of that stuff if your data's a mess. And also, if you've thrown all your data into an unstructured data lake, you can also end up with a bit of a mess. So like this notion of unstructured was kind of an excuse to not structure for a lot of people. And people say unstructured these days, often they'll mean, oh, I've got a one data set on a computer. I've got 4 external hard drives on my shelf. I've got this, I've got that. It's all over the place. So often the work that we found ourselves doing is creating environments that organize geospatial data and make them overtly discoverable. So from a Sparkgeo perspective, we've developed a technology that we call prescient. And it's initially prescient.earth was kind of an R&D lab that we put together. Now we've realized that the most important thing that we can do is build data environments for our customers that act as the foundation layer for more future-looking geospatial activities. So if you need to do the tidying up work. You need to tidy your bedroom, if you like. The data's got to be organized, and then on top of that, you can maybe have some kind of perception layer. But you need to have the basic data access, data delivery, data storage mechanisms, ideally in a kind of a hyperscaling environment, if we're talking about high traffic environments, but using a common but secure API to do this, more meaningful next level of activity. So it's about large organizations deciding that data is absolutely critical to their sort of future activities. And by doing that, you get to unlock a lot of history. You get to unlock a lot of previous aerial surveys or LiDAR surveys or other activities that have previously happened, and you can bring them into a common environment, so you can understand, like, literally the most important question in geography, which is change. Like, I think of like two key products in sort of digital geography. One is what is happening now, and the other is what has changed, because those two things allow you to project. So there isn't a business on earth that doesn't want to have an idea of what's going to happen in the future. So the notion of history and the notion of present allows you to project out to the sense of the future. So if you have your data organized, then you get to have this notion of history, which allows you to think about change within the context of your own business. So change for you might be different from change for me. Change is a very contextual concept, but without data, like robust access to data, you don't get to do any of that stuff. You've captured all this data, and it's just sitting on a shelf, taking up real estate for no good value. So our main push these days with Prescient, which is like this data storage environment, is for organizations to start literally organizing their own data, so it makes sense, so it's accessible, so you can allow machines and humans to easily discover data. And it's a simple thing, and one would have expected that organizations would have dealt with this, but organizations are also human, and humans can get into bad habits, and it's about managing for those bad habits, frankly.
Sparkgeo has been a member of WGIC for a few months now, and I hope you're enjoying your association with us. I want to understand, what do you envisage in this backdrop, in this technology transformation backdrop? What do you envisage for an industry body like WGIC moving forward in making a meaningful impact in the world?
Well, I really enjoyed the Horizons event in Denver, and what I would like, the key thing for that event was having this opportunity for different organizations to interface with each other. And I think that's the piece that was really missing within the geospatial community, is that there were these kind of vendor conferences going on, but there wasn't a single point of discussion around what is the industry doing, how does the industry work, what do we need to do as a body to advocate for digital geography, to advocate for standards around interfacing between organizations, and how do we as an organization interface with the rest of the world, which is obviously a key piece that could be missing from that discussion too. So I see WGIC as an organization that can start having those discussions with governments, with sort of NGOs, and start working towards a sort of a common framework for those organizations, and then have those organizations robustly talk to each other and find opportunity. So I'm a big believer that commerce isn't really a zero-sum game, and that there is a path to more and more success and more growth as organizations better understand the capabilities of each other. So I do think that having a forum for those discussions, even if they're not up on a stage, even if they're off in a corner somewhere, those discussions are really important. And having that convening opportunity of the WGIC is also is a really important opportunity for those discussions to happen.
Great. That's a great insight, Will. Thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation. I so thoroughly enjoyed.
It was great fun. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.